Hello and welcome to the second webinar of the consulting webinar series From Insight to Impact, brought to you by Studying Greece. From Insight to Impact webinar series is included in the broader Studying Greece Intelligence ecosystem, a fresh initiative of Studying Greece, which constitutes a platform where we can find loads of expert insights, professional advice, and best practice in all aspects of internationalization of higher education, provided by professionals, organizations, and individuals from around the globe. As an introduction, I'd like to underline the importance of informed decision-making and the impact of insightful consulting on the internationalization process and strategy of Greek universities. We need up-to-date expert insights into the trends shaping the global higher education landscape. We need strategic consultancy to make data-driven decisions in order to achieve our internationalization goals. That's why Studying Greece partners with leading organizations and professionals of the international higher education sector who are willing to share their expertise and insights and work closely with Studying Greece and Greek universities to help us in our internationalization endeavors. So, in today's event, we're truly honored and privileged to host two experts of the sector of higher education from Times Higher Education, a global leading organization of the sector. I'm delighted to welcome Dr. Ishan Kader, Senior Director at the Consultancy Unit of Times Higher Education, who currently leads Times Higher Education's consultancy services for government, internationalization, and transnational education, and is the author of a number of research reports and white papers, including a research British Council study on transnational education opportunities in France, Greece, and Spain. His work has supported strategic change management for universities and ministries of education seeking to improve their internationalization of students, staff, and research partnerships. Today, we also have the pleasure to welcome Vicky Erwin, a specialist of the higher education sector with over 15 years of client relationship and project management experience and extensive business and strategic marketing consultancy knowledge, who has managed a wide range of strategic marketing projects for universities across the globe. Today's webinar is composed of two parts. In the first part, Vicky will be discussing the importance of brand building, the creation of a strong institutional identity, strategic marketing, and strategic recruitment. And in the second part, Ishan will be delving into focusing on the internationalization on the design, development, and implementation of comprehensive internationalization plan. So, without further delay, I would like to give the floor to Vicky for her presentation. Ishan and Vicky, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Theo, and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you for the introduction, Theo. As Theo said, I'm Vicky Erwin. I'm Senior Director of Consultancy at Times Higher Education. As Theo said, I've been supporting universities across the globe with marketing strategy, brand and reputation strategy, and I'll be leading our first session today. So I'm going to just share my screen, and hopefully everyone can see that now. Perfect. So just a quick introduction into Times Higher Education. So we are now the leading global authority in higher education, and kind of data-driven insights and analysis are at the heart of everything we do. We have the world's biggest rankings with over 2,500 universities submitting data to us from over 120 countries. We also have the world's largest data gathering exercise from universities, including over 400,000 data values. Our website reaches over 30 million visitors yearly, and our rankings launch has a global media reach of 1 billion views. As a result, we now support universities in a whole range of strategic projects, from academic recruitment to global networking to branding and marketing consultancy, which is what I'm going to talk about today. In terms of what we'll cover in the first session, we'll talk about the role of brand. So looking at what brand is, how branding works, what makes a strong brand, why understanding reputation is so important for universities, particularly in the global context, and how to manage your reputation for long-term success. First of all, we're going to go back to basics. So looking at the difference between a product and a brand and the role of a brand. So a product is an item which is made and normally sold in some way, and that could be a physical product, a service, a university degree, etc., and it can be replicated. So multiple companies might sell the same product. Whereas a brand, and there are many different definitions of a brand, as different marketers have slightly differing opinions. For me, a brand is how an organization or a university is positioning itself to influence a customer's decision to choose their product over others. And when we talk about brand, we're not just talking about logo or color palette, it's your culture, your values, what makes you unique, and the story you tell about your institution to create an emotional connection with your stakeholders to get them to choose you as an institution. So here's how it works. Some of you might be familiar with the lifelong rivalry between these two brands here. So the product here is cola. The brands are Pepsi, quite clearly covered there. And I'm assuming most people on this webinar can recognise the second brand, even though there isn't any branding on that can, just from the red can as Coca-Cola. And for a number of years, Pepsi have run a blind taste test to see which product consumers like the most. And when taste testers don't know if they're drinking Pepsi or Coke, most often, or more often than not, they prefer the flavour of Pepsi. And yet, people will still choose to buy Coca-Cola. Year on year, Coca-Cola sales continue to increase and continue to outsell Pepsi. And that choice isn't to do with the product at all. It's to do with the power of the brand. However, your brand is only as good as your reputation. And what do I mean by that? So as I've already said, your brand is how you are presenting yourself, what your organization or your university is saying about itself. Whereas reputation is the public awareness and perception of you. In other words, what people think of you. And that could be both positive or negative or nothing at all. So here are a few tongue-in-cheek examples of what brands might look like if their consumers defined their brands for them. So the first one is Netflix, spending more time searching for something to watch than actually watching it. IKEA, we throw in extra parts just to mess with you. How many times have you built flat pack furniture and have been left with like a few screws and you're wondering what on earth you did wrong? And then Amazon, priming us to never leave the house. Honestly, you should see my front porch at Christmas. It's quite a feat of it's quite a sight. The point is that none of these examples will be what these brands really want their audience to think of them. So if there's too much of a disconnect between what you share about your brand, your university, and the reality of your reputation, then there will become a very obvious disconnect with your audience, and the perceptions that they have will be very different to what you want them to be. And therefore, long-term reputation management, the internal process of kind of communicating your brand and improving your reputation, is integral. And it's really important to consistently understand and monitor the difference between the internal, what you're saying about yourselves, and the external. So you might think you're delivering messaging around research or academic excellence, but A, that message might not be received by the right audience, and B, it might not be important to them. So just a little bit on behavioural psychology and how that impacts reputation. So behavioural psychology suggests that our brain have two approaches to processing information. So system one, fast thinking, where we're able to make quick decisions without having to use lots of energy thinking about them. And then system two, which is slow thinking, where we consider in more detail, think for longer, and it requires more effort and more energy to complete. Well-developed brands help by making it easy for customers to make decisions. So your brain is able to retrieve the information stored about the brand, what it does, why it's better than other brands, how you feel about it, so that you can move on quickly. obviously this psychology might be more aligned to choosing a brand like cola rather than choosing a university degree. So in more complex situations where the decision might be expensive or have a very long lasting impact, we're more likely to spend more time thinking about it. However, even then, the process is still fed by those initial impressions and feelings we get from our fast thinking. So the easier it is to recognize and feel confident about a decision, to recognize and feel confident about your university's brand, the more likely one brand will be chosen over another. And as humans, we are constantly thinking, making decisions, weighing up whether we like something or not. We're forming perceptions all the time. But this process doesn't have to be left by chance. There are many opportunities to shape those perceptions as they're formed and mould those that are already there. And that's the reality of reputation management today. So you cannot sustain good reputation without active input. And the aim is to deliberately try to create a desired perception in the mind of another person. And why is that important in particular in higher education? 3 points here. I think the first is there's a choice of overwhelm for prospective students. So, there are, I think you're competing not just on a local basis now, but on a global basis. And institutions are all telling a very similar story, leading to what we kind of call in the marketing world is the sea of sameness in higher education. So creating a brand that's distinctive and stands out on a global stage is so important. The second point is the market's volatile. We can see even in the UK the impact of visas that are having on international student recruitment. It's becoming increasingly difficult for senior stakeholders to know where to focus their efforts and how to respond to those challenges. So being ready to pivot with data-led strategies and that are tailored for different markets. So understanding who your markets are and how you can tailor your marketing and communications to those markets will help you to pivot on that global stage, even amongst a volatile climate. The third is the future of higher education is changing fast. Internationalization, which we'll talk about later on, diversification. So there's a move, there's been a huge shift to online learning, for example, and different ways of working. Just making sure that you're always future focused and are designing marketing and brand strategies that have long-term impact. So as I say, reputation is about influencing people's perceptions so that they think and say what you want them to when you're not in the room. And so here are the fundamental building blocks that I think should be used for positively influencing reputation and kind of setting you up to successfully reach your goals. The first one is a reputation audit. So it starts with research. Knowledge is power. So understanding your current reputation to inform your future brand and marketing strategies is integral. Then developing, as I say, a strong brand proposition. So one that's defined through research will enable your institution and your people within an institution to speak confidently about what makes you unique and stand out in a very crowded marketplace. The third is defining your marketing strategy. So this is your plan on how you will reach your target audience with the right content at the best time to achieve that sustainable competitive advantage. The fourth is identifying your internal stakeholder networks and making sure you leverage those influential figures in your university to advocate for you. So improving that communication across the university to help manage external audience perceptions. And then finally, ensuring that you consistently monitor and nurture positive perceptions that will help you to sustain good reputation and drive long-term success. And I'll go through those 5 steps in more detail now. So the first one, as I say, reputation audit. So understanding perceptions amongst key stakeholders. So thinking about reputation management in higher education, who are your main stakeholders? Whose perceptions do we care about? Whose opinions should we seek? And who do we want to influence? Well, universities are incredibly complex, and as a result, your list of stakeholders is also very complex. There are a whole range of audiences that you need to consider when thinking about reputation. As institutions, you'll engage with prospective students, current students, staff, both current and again prospective, your alumni, academics from other institutions, both locally and across the globe, international agents, and then beyond that, so employers and industry as well. And it's important to understand how you're perceived across a whole range of stakeholders to truly understand your reputation, and then manage that communication with those stakeholders effectively. Here's an example of one of those stakeholder groups, which is prospective students. As part of the Times Education annual brand tracker, we conduct a survey. So last year it was around 1,700 prospective students. And the reason I'm showing you this is because sometimes I think universities think that reputation equals rankings. And what this survey shows us is whilst rankings are important to prospective students, there are other factors that are more important when selecting a university. So as you can see, high quality teaching, and research, excellent student experience, graduate outcomes, employability, all feature above rankings. So what I'm trying to highlight here is doing your research about your specific audiences, understanding what's important to them, will help to inform your messaging for them moving forward. So how do you go about understanding your reputation? As I mentioned, rankings are one way to understand how you're doing in terms of reputation. I will always encourage clients to conduct further brand and reputation research, though, to help you identify opinions, attitudes, strengths and weaknesses perceived by stakeholders. Two of the most important pieces of research for me are conducting internal and then external stakeholder reviews. So gathering views from your staff, from your academics across the university to understand what your what your organisation thinks are its strengths, what your university is saying about themselves, and then doing the same with external stakeholders to understand whether there are any gaps. I think it's really important, and that will help to inform, as I say, your future communication strategies moving forward. The second thing is media monitoring, so things like social listening, which is reviewing sentiment of your university on social media platforms, looking at things like your digital brand performance, so reviewing your digital brand assets against competitors, reviewing your website performance, etc. All really good indications of your reputation and how you're performing. Customer experience analysis, which is predominantly for students, but asking students about their experiences across multiple touch points. So students can often have anywhere between 10 and 20 different touch points with a university. That could be email, a phone call, your website, they've visited an event, and understanding their experience at every single one of those touch points, which ones are important to them and which ones they've had a good experience or a not so good experience, will help you to identify moments that matter, and again inform your strategies for future focus on which of those touch points might need some attention. And this all helps to give a really holistic view of where your brand is now and where you're looking to be, and that will all feed into what your marketing and communication priorities should be moving forward. So step two, your brand positioning, your brand development. So developing a successful brand in higher education can be challenging. As I've already said, it's a crowded marketplace and students have so much choice. A powerful higher education brand, firstly, needs to be memorable. So your brand needs to be known for you to even be considered. And then developing clear messages that are delivered by everyone in your organisation, alongside strong brand assets like your logo, your font, your colours, will help to make your brand more easily recognisable for your audience. And then making sure this is consistently applied to everything. So always, if someone can immediately recognise you, that fast thinking part of your brain can suddenly be working to communicate positive perceptions and feelings. Then kind of the next point is that your brand needs to be distinctive. So your audience need to be able to tell you apart from other universities that they might be considering. You need to tell people not only the value you offer, but how that is different from any other university. And it is becoming more challenging to stand out. My advice is tell your story, where your university came from, what it's accomplished over the years, why it started in the first place, and then think about the values you uphold, the problems you solve, the aspirations you have. So kind of tell your university story and what makes it unique. And then the final point is make it meaningful. So help your audience to identify with you. Give them a reason. Why should they care about you? Think of it like wanting your students and your staff and your alumni to feel proud of you and their decision to study or to work with you. And how you communicate who you are and what you stand for will inform people's perceptions and, as I say, their emotional reaction to you. In terms of creating a brand position that's different, that middle point that I just talked about was that distinctiveness. One way to differentiate your brand is to find things that your customers want, so this left circle, that you do really well, the right hand circle, but your competitors don't. That's your USP, your unique selling point. What do you offer that other universities don't? That's your winning zone. And that's why that research is really important, to understand what your customers want and how you can best meet those needs. For example, one of the things we test in our research for clients is a series of brand statements. So we will ask prospective students, for example, if they agree or disagree with certain statements against a list of competing universities, to see if there's anything that is unique, so we can see if there are things that really set that university apart and help us to define that winning zone. And an example, so I worked with a university in the UK for a period of about 5-6 years. They decided to embark on a really extensive brand and reputation research project to really understand what their students wanted from them. And what they found, for example, was that sustainability was really important to their students. So that formed one of their key brand pillars. And I think the key is to make sure it's not just lip service, that you're actually following through with any promise that you make, that you're kind of living and breathing your brand. So this university made multiple pledges for a more sustainable university. They adapted their curriculum. They built more energy efficient buildings on campus. They were the first university in the UK to get rid of their printed prospectus. And they found a brand attribute that was unique, that was important to their students, and that they then lived and breathed to show students that their messaging was truthful and authentic. As a result, they climbed the UK rankings by more than 50 places. They increased their student recruitment by over 5,000 in a 5-year period. So focusing on some key brand strengths that are important to their students really helped them to succeed in quite a volatile marketplace. The third point, so thinking about your marketing strategy. And what I would say is, for this, think about current context through market research. So think about where you are now as an institution, how you're performing, and then where you want to be. Use this as an opportunity to map out your institutional goals, your aspirations, and your priorities, and then use that to then define your target markets and your external stakeholders and routes to market, and that will enable you to successfully reach those audiences and therefore reach your goals. And then think about how you will shape your brand for the market. So think about refining your messaging for different audiences, as we talk here about kind of messaging hierarchies, shaping and planning creative and campaigns for the future to support your new marketing strategy, leverage the power of your brand, and reach and engage with audiences with the right message at the right time with the right creative that inspires them the most. And then thinking about how you activate through different marketing tactics, such as your website, your internal and external communication strategies, advertising campaigns, etc. So creating a tactical marketing plan that will help you, as I say, to deliver the right message to the right audience at the right time. And for me, there are three key things when activating your brand, which I always, again, advise clients to keep in mind: that you are frequent with your messaging to help with making you more visible and known to your audience. The second is that you use anchoring, and this is a marketing term. So messaging needs to be associated with an emotional anchor. So giving your audience a reason to believe what you're saying. So give examples, not just facts. Create messages that give real life examples and can help to create an emotional connection with your audience. So use anchoring. It's a really great way to start, as I say, creating that connection. And then the third one for me is consistency. So consistency with what you're communicating, what you're showing, what you're saying is really, really important. Which leads me on to the fourth stage, which is internal stakeholder engagement. Brand is the DNA of every organization. It's what makes you you, and that DNA is made up of staff and other internal stakeholders, and they need to be equipped to support your reputation, to strengthen recruitment, and to kind of deepen that brand distinction. So first of all, you'll want to create brand guidelines, and this is your rule book for your brand voice, your brand, your visual identity, and so effectively your rule book that you can share with the whole of the university on how you want to present yourself externally. And then once you've got all of your brand fundamentals in place, it's essential to ensure that your internal stakeholders are engaged and that teams are set up to tell your brand story so that you can leverage its power. And the more joined up your organisation, the louder your voice and the stronger the advocacy will be from your supporters. Changes to your brand mean changes to your organisation from what you're saying about yourself externally. So making sure that you're developing processes and ways of working internally to help support that. So think about workshops, internal communications that allow you to communicate why it's important. That you're all speaking the same voice and that you're all using the same, brand visuals. Encourage joined up storytelling is really important. And then show stakeholders how they can all help to change perceptions collectively with external audiences. And then finally, is that kind of ongoing reputation management and optimization. So your a successful brand is never finished. You'll want to make sure that your efforts are working, that you're meeting your objectives. It's so important to keep measuring consumer perceptions of your brand. And when it comes to measuring effectiveness and brand and marketing, I've always tried to get clients to measure in two different ways. So the first way is kind of short-term campaign metrics. So universities will often be driven by these metrics. So things like web conversions, open day attendance, applications enrollment numbers, because of short-term student recruitment targets. And that's all really, really important. However, it's also important to measure longer-term brand and reputation metrics that might not necessarily mean that it's, you're looking at short-term application and enrollment numbers. You're looking at longer term perceptions and whether you're managing to change how people perceive you as an institution. And so, for example, we host a syndicated annual brand tracker that universities can join. And that provides just a light touch, an annual kind of assessment of any impact of your institution's reputation. So just that, whether it's annually or biannually touch point to see whether the messages that you're putting out to your audience are actually being received is really, really important, and making sure that you've got buy-in to monitor that consistently. So by understanding the perceptions of your audiences, you can then start to shape public perceptions and help to drive long-term success. So as I say, investing time in managing your brand and reputation strategically can help you to achieve goals. So your goals could be to target and convert prospective students. It could be to engage funders for future ambitions. It could be to recruit and engage research and industry, or to support your sustainability strategies and other goals. It could be to support internationalization, as Isham will talk about shortly, and to proactively manage any kind of crisis communication. So that continuous long-term reputation management is so important to achieve long-term success. Very quickly, at Times Higher Education, we have developed a brand reputation framework that we are using consistently to support universities through that journey, everything from helping you with your reputation audits, rankings performance, right through to then your brand positioning, your marketing strategy, and how you then position that in front of the right audience. So finally, just my top tips before I wrap up. I'm going to try and leave 5-10 minutes at the end for Q&A. My top tips are a university's brand and reputation, should be carefully managed. It should be strategic and proactive. And where I've seen the most successful university brands is where vice chancellors, presidents, rectors set the tone from the top, and it is a strategic goal across the whole university that brand and reputation form part of the university's objectives. The second point is, I think I've said it enough, but research is key. So really understanding what your stakeholders think of you to see if there is a disconnect between what you share about your brand and those perceived reputation, so that you can proactively start to influence and manage through authentic messaging. The third is promoting a clear brand narrative that's adopted by everyone across your institution, and that will create consistency. A narrative that is simple and clear and meaningful, and as I say, that is consistently used by everyone across your university, will help to get that long-term success. And then finally, important to measure how you're performing and continuously optimize for long-term success. And that's it for me. I will stop sharing my screen. And are there any questions? I can just see the chat.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Vicky, for this insightful and inspiring presentation, I would say. I can start with one remark. As far as I can understand, the brand building narrative and storytelling of each institutions extend beyond its academic characteristics and scientific disciplines and study programs offered by the institutions, right?
Yeah, 100%. So where I've seen universities be really successful is not where they've just talked about teaching and research excellence. It's where they've talked about their values, their culture, what they really stand for as a university, because that's when you start to create a really meaningful connection. I think particularly with students, with student audiences, they want to know that they're joining a university that cares, that the example I gave around the university, that one of their main brand attributes was around sustainability. Students wanted to feel part of a community that really cared about sustainability. So as I say, it's not just about talking about, as I say, rankings. It's not just talking about research excellence. I know, I'm coming from Times Higher, but I truly believe that it goes far beyond rankings. It's going as deep as who you are as an institution, what your values are, what your mission is, what you want to achieve. Whether that's for research impact, how you want that to have an impact on communities and society, that's when you really start to create an emotional connection with audiences.
Yeah, definitely. We have a question. Evie, can you ask? Okay.
Are there any kind of specificities in the strategy you suggested between undergraduate and graduate programs? I don't know if I understand the question. As I say, I think it's about research. If I'm reading the question correctly, so making sure that you're speaking to, for me, current and prospective undergraduate and postgraduate students, and understanding how those two audiences differ, because they will have very different needs, very different barriers to why they're selecting universities or why they might not be selecting universities. So, as I say, really understanding, and it could be through surveys, it could be through focus groups, what those students need, and the differences between those two audiences. And then what I would say is create your brand, create your what we normally do with our clients is create 4 or 5 key brand pillars, and they are your core attributes that you want to be known for as an institution. And that could be sustainability. It could be that as an institution we create a sense of community. It could be that we are inclusive. It could be that we are academic excellence. They're just some examples of brand attributes that you could say that we want to be absolutely 100% known for, but then tailoring those for different audiences. So how you then think about inclusivity for undergraduate audiences versus postgraduate audiences. So for inclusivity for an undergraduate audience could mean societies, getting people to young students to come in and create communities. Whereas for your postgraduate audiences, it could be actually creating opportunities for more flexible more flexible learning, because they might be working parents. So then just thinking about how you tailor those messages. But as I say, it all starts with research. I hope I've answered your question. Any other questions? Please do feel to reach out to me separately if you've got any questions or need any advice. Perfect.
Do you think that the rich cultural heritage of Greece and some cities and areas in the country can constitute a component of this strategic and brand awareness and storytelling, or not? It's something very cliche.
Sorry, say that again. So it's Greece as a location.
History and culture, yeah, history and culture.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, again, it'd be really interesting to kind of, as I say, speak to your current students about why they've selected Greece. I think especially international students, to understand what their motivations are and what it is about Greece as a location that made them want to pick to come and study in country. And if there are, really key strengths that they said, actually, I picked Greece because of, I don't know, culture or weather, or I've done a lot in the UK where I've worked with universities in central London and then universities by a beach, by the beach, and location actually is really important to students. So if, again, understanding your current students and why they've picked Greece in particular, and using that as a unique selling point, I think could definitely work.
Even if it's generic sometimes or classic, no.
Yeah, I mean, if you speak to 100 students and 90 of them say we picked Greece because of X, for me that's something that really stands out, and that's a USP, and that's something that you should shout about, because that's why people are choosing Greece. That's why people are kind of choosing to believe in you over anyone else. So yeah.
Great.
So, thank you very
Thank you
much.
very much. It was really fascinating and insightful. And we can have a virtual coffee break, and we'll get back to you in 10 minutes, hmm, with Ishan's presentation.
Perfect. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much, Vicky. You're great. Ishan, if you are ready, we can start in 2 minutes. Hmm?
Hey Theo, shall I share my screen so that in 2 minutes we're ready to go?
Great. Yeah. Yeah. So welcome back in the second part of our event. Ishan Kader, Dr. Ishan Kader. It's Ishan or Aishan?
It's Ishan.
Ishan. Ishan Kader, Senior Director at the Consultancy of Times Higher Education, will be sharing insights regarding the conception, design, development, and implementation of a comprehensive internationalization strategy, both at national and institutional level. Ishan, the floor is yours, and thank you very much for joining us and for providing us with all these great, all your expertise actually, and great insights.
Thank you so much, Theo, and welcome back, everyone. It's a real delight to join this Study in Greece seminar. And I think, as Theo mentioned right at the beginning, it's a really exciting time for Greece, and it's great to hear that there are internationalization strategies being created and engagement with global universities being taken really seriously by the Greek sector. We also know that there's been changes in some of the legislation in Greece that will mean a greater presence and potential for Greek universities to interact with foreign universities as well. I'd also like to thank my colleague Vicky for the wonderful presentation on reputation. There are some interlinks between internationalization and reputation, especially around recruitment. But for today's session, really what I wanted to focus on was providing some data and some perspective based on the work that we have done across multiple different markets around the world at both ministerial and at institutional level as well. So first of all, I'm just going to talk a little bit about the internationalization perspective we have at Times Higher Education, which is partially based on some of our data from the World University Rankings. I'm then going to talk about international student recruitment trends, transnational education, the importance of internationalization of staff, and also how to enhance international research collaborations. And then towards the end, we're just going to give some perspectives and what we hope is a radical new way of conceptualizing how Greece could become a really important strategic international education hub, serving educational needs within the region and globally as well. So just to talk a little bit about our approach to internationalization. Now, I don't want to dwell too much on rankings at all. For me, the most important thing that we see with rankings is the data that underlies it to be able to provide institutions and governments benchmarks for improvement in strategy over time. Now, we have 18 different metrics within our World University Rankings, divided across 5 metric pillars. Those pillars are the research environment, research quality, teaching environment, industry, and international outlook. So I want to focus on the international outlook metrics. If we look across towards the right-hand side of the graph, what we see are the 3 key international metrics which we measure university performance by. And those are international staff, international co-authorship, and international students. We do also have a metric for studying abroad, but currently that metric is weighted at 0. So although we have information on studying abroad, we don't actually count that towards the overall ranking. So if we concentrate on the 3 metrics for international staff, co-authorship, and students, we do see that compared to the rest of the world, Greece is behind the global average. So for each of those box plots, on the left-hand side, there is the score for Greece, and on the right-hand side, there is the bar for the global distribution. And what we can say is that compared to the rest of the world at the moment in 2025, as well as over the last 7 years, what we see in the data is that the international pillar is the area that needs most improvement across the Greek universities. So if we look on the left-hand side there, we see, for example, at the top, that Greek universities perform very well in terms of research quality ahead of the global median. But as we move downwards, we do see at the bottom international outlook. And on the right-hand side, we track those scores over a 7-year period. And again, here we see a great achievement for Greek universities pioneering industry ahead of the global median. But again, international outlook there is a little bit lower. And what that tells us is that there are areas that the Greek university sector, as individual institutions, but I think also collaboratively as a sector, can improve on. So when we talk about internationalization, what we really mean then is how to improve your international students, how to enhance your international staff recruitment, and how to diversify and enhance and increase your international research co-authorship. Now on this graph, what I've done is just shown some benchmark scores for Greece versus some other markets. Now, I haven't selected these markets by random. I think there are important features of each of these markets that can tell a story for Greece as well. So Turkey, for example, I've put in there, even though it's a much larger market in terms of the number of universities, has put into place internationalization strategic policies and started from a very low base in terms of its overall internationalization outlook. For Spain and Italy, there are similarities in terms of the reputation and collateral as an attractive destination for study. Austria, I've put in there because, again, it has traditionally been fairly low on internationalization, but we have seen rapid improvements there. And the UK remains there because it is one of the most international of all the markets. So you can see those scores there. Again, Greece slightly lower there than Turkey. Now, I think this data set, we had 18 or 13 different Greek universities on the international metric. So one Greek university had 12% international students, but the remaining 12 Greek universities had between 1 and 6%. By comparison, out of 32 institutions provided in the Spanish data set, there were 10% international students, and 6 of them had more than 20% international students. So again, this just provides a little bit of benchmarking to understand where Greece is at in comparison to some other markets. Now, when we look a little bit more closely at Greece's international student recruitment, so this is incoming students into Greece, and this data is taken from UNESCO. And unfortunately, there has been a lack of consistent updating for the last couple of years. But what we did see was a peak of international recruitment around 2011, and then a fairly significant decline up to 2016, and then the green shoots of recovery coming back into play. So it still has a while to go before recovering from its 2011 peak. And when we dive into a bit deeper in terms of the countries of origin of where you are recruiting students from, we do see that Cyprus has been fairly consistently the top source country for international students. And we also see that Albania in the yellow line there is probably responsible for that dip that we see in 2011. So somehow there was quite a dramatic fall in recruitment from Albania from 2011 onwards, and that has impacted your overall figures, as you can see on that graph. So currently, well, the 2021 figures show that there was around 22,000 international students in Greece, and around 15,000 of those are from Cyprus. So the story that we see here is potentially the need for diversification of the source market in terms of international recruitment, maybe a heavy reliance currently on Cyprus, although I do take into account that I'm sure things have changed since 2021. And again, just to give you some benchmarks in terms of other countries' international recruitment, bearing in mind, again, the figure for Greece was around 22,000 in 2021. A similar figure there for Spain is almost at 80,000, and also the same for Austria as well. Again, bigger markets, so we do expect to see high numbers of students, but it just gives you some benchmarks in terms of that trajectory. There has been significant growth in Spain over the last 20 years, and similarly, a doubling of the number in Austria as well. What this shows is that countries that enable internationalization strategies can really enhance international student recruitment and become a really important destination as well. Now, what I've done for this graph is use UK data. So what you see here are international students coming to the UK. And why I think this is important, again, the UK is a much bigger sector. We are talking about around 160 institutions here. But outside of the US, the UK is essentially the most important market for international recruitment in terms of sheer numbers. So it gives you a good indication of where the interest is coming from in terms of international markets around the world seeking to study in the English language. No surprises here in terms of what the top markets are. And this is for the 2023 data. We see India with over 160,000 new enrollments in the UK in 2023 and over 150,000 from China. Of course, they're the two biggest countries in the world, so you would expect to see that within the UK. I think the question for a country like Greece is, are there opportunities for Greek universities to pivot and potentially recruit more from those markets as well? Because we see a huge amount of interest for studying in the English language. Other emerging markets within there, Nigeria, Pakistan, Bangladesh, but even France, Germany, Spain, and Italy all remain within the top 20 markets for recruitment into the UK, and that's despite Brexit. So when you go through that list, there's genuine diversity of source markets from around the world, with established markets in South Asia, East Asia, the Middle East, and Europe. Now, a key to this was the UK government's 2019 international education strategy. There was a key pivot in policy at the highest level, which started to count international student recruitment as an export good. And this really gave incentivization for universities to increase their international student recruitment. And of course, we do know that international student recruitment has been crucial to university finances in the UK as well. So I wanted just to show this because I think it gives you a good understanding of where your diversification may be possible. So far, recruitment in Greece tends to have been dominated by the European sphere, but we see really strong interest from South Asia and beyond for new recruitment opportunities. So just conclude this international recruitment segment, I think Greece really has the opportunity to leverage new and dynamic mobility trends and also address the fact that there has been a tightening of recruitment in the major Anglophone markets. I think Vicky alluded to this. In America, in Australia, in Canada, there have been defined government policies to try and limit the amount of international recruitment. That's also been the case with the UK as well, to a certain extent, although the current government has welcomed international students. So how can Greece take advantage of these opportunities? I think the first thing for me when we work with either governments or institutions is really to try and use data sources to help you forecast trends from different parts of the world. And this really means creating a culture of using up-to-date data on recruitment and mobility, really creating a culture where data is central to your decision-making, something that Vicky mentioned as well. And of course, always important to keep an eye on policy developments in source countries and competitor markets as well. I'm going to give you a very brief example of this. I've done some work for the Ministry of Education in Georgia, a relatively small country in the South Caucasus, and something that you wouldn't immediately think of as an international study dedication. However, it has tripled its international recruitment over the last 10 years, with a particularly large spike in 2021. Following the war in Ukraine, Georgia started to absorb many students in medicine and dentistry that were coming from India and Bangladesh. The Georgian government realized that international students were bringing more money to the Georgian economy than Georgian wine, which is one of its favorite and most treasured exports. So the government has now started to invest money in enhancing that internationalization. So understanding the policy and geopolitical environment is also very crucial to understand how you can leverage trends. Following that, it's really important to develop concrete relationships with these potential growth markets. So creating strategic approaches, partly some of that is reputation and marketing as well. Exploring the use of agents within countries, investing in promotion, and undertaking things like discovery delegations. It's something that the UK government does all the time in taking delegations of vice chancellors to different countries. I also see in other countries that are trying to internationalize. For example, India, which has a clear mandate from its 2020 national education policy to internationalize, is starting to take delegations all around the world to create those relationships. And finally, of course, it's really important, I think, to learn the best practice from other markets. There's many other countries around the world outside of the Anglosphere that have undertaken a similar journey of having relatively low rates of internationalization, but actually being successful in implementing strategies and policies to drive up internationalization. So this can include having clear strategic and operations sector-wide key performance indicators, investing in international recruitment teams within universities, including creating the expertise within those teams, and finally, advocating for the broader economic impact of internationalization. This, for me, is really important. Most governments recognize that international students bring economic benefits to the country, not just in terms of the money that they spend, but in terms of the talent pipeline and the innovation that they could bring as future workforce. Now, I think when governments are convinced of the case for the economic impact, that also allows them to justify spending decisions to invest more in internationalization. So it's in your benefit to work as a sector together, and of course with study in Greece, to effectively lobby for Greece as a destination for international recruitment. I do now want to touch upon transnational education, and the importance of this is that there's quite a contrast story for Greece here. In the previous slides, we saw that Greece has slightly lower rates of internationalization when we look at it through the lens of direct international student recruitment. However, Greece is actually already a hub for transnational education. And again, we're using UK data here to show the number of enrollments of students studying for a UK degree outside of the UK. So I showed those benchmark markets before, Turkey, Italy, and I've included France and Spain and Austria here as well. Greece really is the largest host of UK transnational education in Europe by quite some distance. 25,000 students in 2023 studied for a UK degree in Greece. Now, of course, the majority of those degrees are delivered in partnerships with your private colleges. However, the fact that TNE is already established in Greece really could open doors to more mobile arrangements with UK universities and other universities abroad as well. So this could, for example, include the creation of more joint and dual degrees and putting into place flexible arrangements like the 2+2, which would allow students maybe to study for 2 years in Greece and then complete their degree at the foreign university abroad. So these partnerships with high quality foreign universities also have the knock-on impact of enabling long-term reputation and visibility in international markets. So transnational education is actually a real growth area in Greece and an important area, I believe, for the public sector institutions to join in as well, because actually Greece as a TNE hub, it's already there. And so it's something that you can leverage very quickly. And just to give you a sense of how important transnational education is in general, what you see here is the growth of both transnational education and international recruitment directly to the UK over the last 5 years. In the red bar, we have the transnational education figures. So those are students studying for a UK degree outside of the UK. And in the purple bar, we see international students studying for a UK degree in the UK. Both have grown, UK T&E has grown by about 40% in the last 5 years, compared to around 35% growth of direct international student recruitment, so both very healthy. But overall, T&E accounts for 40% of all international students for the UK. So, and it is much higher for the UK than other countries, it has to be said, but it also demonstrates that international students are willing to engage in higher education through transnational education at scale. These are large numbers in terms of global presence for the UK. So again, I'm not suggesting that Greek universities should only partner with the UK universities, but it is clear from the data that there are students around the world that are willing to go to non-UK countries to do a UK degree. And in the report that we conducted for the British Council late last year, we found that actually students in Greece studying T&E are not just Greek students. You are recruiting from outside of Greece to come to Greece to study UK degrees. And I think that's a really fascinating phenomenon. We also uncovered relationships that Greek colleges have that deliver UK qualifications in Romania, in Azerbaijan, in Armenia, and Georgia. So again, a really strong international presence of Greek institutions delivering UK degrees. So it's something to think about in terms of how the sector wants to approach that evolving framework. I know that the Greek government has provided more direction on increasing transnational education, and equally, UK universities are turning more and more to transnational education to mitigate problems of direct access into the UK for some international students from different markets. And again, just to give you a sense of what those top 20 markets are for UK transnational education, great diversity there. India is not the top here, it's China, but you see some other markets that you might not really expect. Sri Lanka, a small country, is the second largest market for transnational education. We've got Egypt in there, and Greece is the sixth largest market in the world for UK transnational education, and even Cyprus also emerges in the top 20. And again, real diversity there. 5 universities from the APAC region, 5 from the Middle East region, 4 from South Asia, and 4 from Europe. And even below this group, we have plenty of countries with over 5,000 enrollments, including Ireland, Nigeria, Trinidad, South Africa, Spain, and Canada. So what I'm saying here is that there's real diversity in the potential source markets for Greek international recruitment through transnational education means moving forward. And again, just to finalize some data here, looking at the rapid changes that take place in T&E markets. This is the change, the percentage change in the top 10 UK T&E markets between 21-22 and 22-23. We see Greece there, that increased by nearly 27% in just 1 year. We do see India at the end there with a 75% increase, but we also see some changes in the market construction. Malaysia and Hong Kong, that used to be very important for UK transnational education, those markets are now actually declining in terms of enrollments. So we are seeing a shift of the gravity of UK transnational education. And I do believe that many universities in the UK will be interested in taking advantage of the opportunity in Greece to partner with the universities in order to deliver their programs in many different forms. And I think this really provides Greece the chance to increase inbound recruitment and create a genuine hub for regional education. A few things to consider. First of all, it's very important for the sector to work together to create the right models of transnational education. There are many different forms of T&E with many different benefits. We have branch campuses, we have hybrid or online learning degrees, we have joint and dual degrees. All of these programs are increasing in different markets. We see a lot of different trends, but it's crucial for the Greek sector to understand how best to take advantage of new opportunities in T&E. And that leads to the next point about being open and flexible and agile to new ideas in T&E. Greece already hosts, I think, impactful and dynamic transnational education in your private sector, and they're developing these innovative approaches. We are seeing newer dynamics in international partnerships. Vicky alluded to some of these in reputation. There's diversification in how degree programs are being delivered. So all of these things should be considered when considering how the sector and individual institutions want to take transnational education forward. So finally, work in collaboration to ensure that there is a hub mentality. So for example, this could be creating joint councils to ensure that there is strategic development of an education hub, providing clear, transparent information and data for prospective foreign partners. But also, again, I emphasize, create mechanisms to evidence the impact of transnational education on Greek society and economy, because that is where it will get the greatest buy-in from all of your stakeholders, your internal stakeholders, your students, as well as government and society as well. And we've got some ideas at the end just to construct how the evidence impact can take place. So for the next section, which are a bit briefer, I just want to talk about international staff. So again, we do have data on international staff activity within Greece. And again, Greece does have slightly lower international staff percentages than some equivalent countries. So these are 13 institutions from Greece that have provided data 2 times higher education. And I've anonymized all of them, but you can see there that only one public higher education institution in Greece had more than 5% of international staff. So internationalization of staff is really key to enhancing global collaboration and providing a diversity of the learning experience for students. The key knock-on impact here is that it prepares students better for the challenges of the global economy by taking in diverse perspectives. And again, if we look at different countries that have also undertaken internationalization over the last 10 to 20 years, we see different levels. Here are the top 10 universities from Spain and Malaysia, 2 very different contexts. But we see there that, for example, in Malaysia, one university has more than 30% international staff. And when we look at this in terms of the sector as a whole, Greece has around an average of 1.3% for international staff. Turkey, not far away, has about 2.8%, Spain at 3.4%. But then you see it going upwards and upwards as you move towards Asia. China, 8.5%, Malaysia, 11%, and Saudi Arabia, nearly 46%. Now, all these countries have really invested and implemented direct strategies of reaching out to hire staff from different countries. Again, it's seen as a key driver in enhancing global visibility, the quality of research and teaching, and the overall outlook and mindset of the institution as well. So, of course, whilst universities in the major Anglophone markets like the UK, America, and Australia have always had high percentages of international staff, the latest trends show pivot towards internationalization in Asia. And this has been driven by both economic development and education strategies, with the desire to enhance international collaborations, to raise the profile and research of domestic institutions, and have a knock-on effect of improving the overall quality of the higher education sector within the country. So here again, I believe that Greece has excellent reputational collateral to become a key destination for international staff, which can support the regional and global ambitions of the sector. So it can help staff embed a global mindset. Diversifying staff can embed a culture of collaboration and learning that prepares students for the global economy. And I think a key policy initiative is to review hiring practice here to ensure that there's greater visibility for jobs. Long-term benefits really include enhancement of research quality as well. More international academics can lead to higher impact research and greater visibility of that research. But in order to successfully do this, countries do need to provide incentivization to diversify international staff. So this could be on visa rules, it could be on salary. There's a number of different incentivizations that institutions and the sector as a whole can make to encourage more international staff. And now just to look at international research. So international research collaborations are the final metric for Times Higher Education's International Outlook pillar. Now, Greece here is already doing really well. There's not much to say in terms of advice. These are the top 10 institutions in Greece with the highest percentage of international collaborations. Again, I've anonymized them here, but really strong international collaborations from the Greek sector with the rest of the world. And when we look again at some benchmark countries, Malaysia, Turkey, and China, as I said, they've all actually invested a lot in international staff. However, their sectors are quite large and uneven. What that means is the average rate of international research collaboration is lower because the internationalization of staff has tended to proceed and research heavily in a small group of universities. I think Saudi Arabia is a key example of direct correlation between investment in international staff and immediate growth in international collaborations. We have seen a rapid takeoff of international collaborations in Saudi Arabia. However, I think the level where Greece is at, 46.3% on average, international collaborations is very, very strong and comparable to the best in Europe as well. One thing I did want to touch about in terms of collaborations, and sorry if this is a little bit small to see, I've taken the top 10 markets that you collaborate with in research. And what we see here is that it's mainly European focused. So the UK is your biggest collaborator with 17% of research collaborations. Outside of Europe, it's the US and 5% for China in terms of that top 10. So still very European focused, with the US and China as exceptions. Now, if we look at some of the other benchmark countries, we do see a bit more diversification. Although, of course, it is very fair to say that across the world, any country tends to collaborate more with its immediate region. That's fair enough to say. Saudi Arabia has a great amount of diversity within its top 10 international research collaborations. Egypt, India, Pakistan, the US, China, UK, Malaysia, Tunisia, South Korea, and Australia. So quite diverse in terms of reach. As you would expect, the UK also has some diversity, but still relatively European focused, as is Spain. Although Spain, interestingly, does have Brazil within its top 10, and it's quite rare to see a Latin American country within the top 10 partners for countries outside of Latin America. And likewise, Malaysia tends to be a bit more regionally focused, with main collaborations across the Middle East, East Asia, and South Asia. So what all of this tells us here is that there is room for diversification. Greece already has a good level of international collaboration, but it is mainly located in Europe, and there is scope to take advantage of new and emerging markets that are really interested in forwarding their own international research collaborations. And there is a whole load of data that can support the construction of strategies on how to diversify and essentially access new pots of knowledge for research. So in terms of your international research collaborations, I do believe a formalized strategy can help diversify and develop greater regional and global impact. So you have great international collaborations, and I think what Greece can do is turn those collaborations into further global impact. So we suggest developing a primary and secondary target market list to support international engagement. You've got great collaborations in the European sphere, but there can be targeted development to support research engagement across Asia, Africa, and the Americas as well. This all leads back to funding allocations that can support international engagement and collaborative research, but also linking international research development directly with Greece's own economic development strategy and ambitions as well. So basically having alignment between institutions and sector-wide ambitions for internationalization with the Greek economy needs as well, because that will drive the greatest impact. So to finish off, I've just got a short section on what we are trying to provide the international sector with ecosystem design to develop international hubs. We've called this TNE 3.0. And it's based on a report that I did with our managing director back last September. And it's really about how transnational education can help support sustainability and national economic development. And crucially, how domestic institutions can benefit from this process as well. Now, we've based our research through work that we have done across 31 different countries and territories worldwide since 2022. As I said, there's lots of different forms of transnational education. We have Egypt, which combines international branch campuses, franchise operations, and online learning. We've got high growth branch campus markets like Uzbekistan that has gone from 0 to 33 different foreign university campuses in the last 5 years. We've got smaller but rapid growth franchise markets like Sri Lanka. I mentioned it was the second largest for UK transnational education, lots of private colleges delivering foreign education there. And again, international campus hubs like Dubai that have a very strong existing infrastructure of international branch campuses, but are seeking better ways on how to connect those branch campuses with the local universities and improve them as well. And I think this is a key to the perspective that we are offering, is that it's all good and well having transnational education and internationalization, but the impact on society is really the most important thing behind this. So what is TNE? It's an ecosystem. It's a framework to enable a greater impact on those foreign universities, host country sustainability and development. It follows a trajectory of understandings of TNE where we move from the simple development of branch campuses to actual host countries wanting foreign universities to help contribute to better research, better sustainability, better industry and enterprise as well. Now, what this diagram shows is, let's say, a kind of idealized dynamic ecosystem of innovation, research, and entrepreneurship, where any foreign university has to create dynamic relationships with local universities and even local technical providers to connect to international business, to local business, provide incubation hubs, and create shared research facilities. Now, I wanted to talk about this because I know that there is potential ambition within Greece to bring in foreign universities or at least enable further private education. And I think for the public higher education system, I think it should be tried to see this as a strong opportunity to enhance your internationalization by creating those relationships on the ground with foreign institutions and maybe even private providers, using those relationships to connect directly in to international business, using those relationships to create new types of research and new innovation structures as well. We've developed a framework of 6 different pillars to help governments and universities monitor the impact of this transnational education through strategy, through integration with the local economy, through innovation ecosystems, through developing excellence in research and teaching, helping to impact on the infrastructure of the country, but also to help contribute to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals as well. As Vicky said in her presentation, we see more and more evidence of students really linking their experience to sustainability in universities. And finally, at Times Higher Education, we already have a lot of data points that can support universities and governments monitor the impact of their work. So not only I showed some data from our World University Rankings, which is really just a small fraction of the different things that we can support with. We also have our impact rankings that measure universities' performance against the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So we have data from all 17 Sustainable Development Goals that can help universities understand that overall impact. So I am going to leave it there. I hope this has been useful for everyone attending. There is a QR code there, so please feel free to download our report on TNE 3.0. And just to say the different ways that we can help support your international ambitions, we conduct a wide variety of consultancy and advisory services for internationalization. That can include global marketing intelligence on students, TNE, and international research collaborations. We help universities create internationalization strategy. We've helped governments develop funding incentivization mechanisms to enable internationalization. We can connect you with partners from around the world through partnership development programs. We can help you with TNE ecosystem design. But we also have things like international staff hiring solutions through our website. We can offer training workshop for improving institutional readiness for internationalization. And finally, just a call back to the work that Vicky's team do, really helping promote Greece and your universities as a study destination through our marketing consultancy. So thank you so much for your time today. It's been great to attend, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions as well.
Well, that was great. Thank you very much, Ishan. And first of all, special thanks for the endorsement about the high quality of higher education and research being produced in Greece. I truly believe that we have a high quality higher education ecosystem, but I think that what we lack is promotion. We do not promote our product. Regarding international cooperation and TNE, as you mentioned, Greek universities prefer to develop collaborations with European institutions, and that makes sense because, within the European framework and context, with all these tools provided like Erasmus, Erasmus Plus, and Horizon, we have the platform, network, and framework in order to exchange and develop various collaborations. But of course, we have to diversify, as you mentioned, because there are many emerging countries in the field, in the sector. And we also have to look at them, understand them, and foster further collaboration with them. It is worth mentioning that in the last 4 years, the Greek state, the Ministry of Education, studying Greece and Greek universities are more engaged in the academic and scientific cooperation. The ministry prioritizes international collaboration in higher education, incentivizing Greek universities through the provision of funding tools for the creation of joint, dual, and double degrees, and studying Greece with Greek universities design and implement strategic partnership programs, for example, with British Council, to give you a telling example. We have the UK-Greece Strategic Partnership in Education program, which constitutes a framework, a platform for the creation, the development of collaboration, both research and academic, between Greek and UK institutions. We have similar frameworks, programs with the United States, the International Academic Partnership Program Greece, with Italy, Unitalia, we're about to develop a similar project, and with Campus France and DAAD. So that was from my part. If there are any questions from the field, please address these questions to our experts. Are there any questions? Or okay. Our audience is shy, so they need their time,
Yeah, that's no problem. And of course, we'd welcome anyone to follow up with us directly afterwards as well. We're more than happy to answer any questions.
Mhm. I would also like to mention that all this, your presentation, will be available online on our Studying Greece Intelligence webpage. As a conclusion, I would like to say, and I'm sharing it with you, that it's a matter of culture as well, because Greek universities and even other universities of other countries within the EU didn't have this over the last decades, didn't have this extroversion and outreach and entrepreneurial mindset needed to invest in internationalization. So we are making our first steps. I think that the sector is growing rapidly in Greece, and there are more and more international programs created. Greek universities engage in recruitment. We are about to develop our recruitment strategies. We target some specific countries from which we can attract students. So it's a really fascinating and ongoing situation, I would say. Universities and the state and before studying Greece realize the benefits of internationalization and transnational education.
And I think there's a lot of evidence as well in the last few years to suggest that student choice for international education is diversifying heavily as well. And, partly that's based on political or visa situations in certain countries, but we have seen a rapid uptake of students coming to Europe to study English language taught degrees. So we've got of course, in Germany, in the Netherlands, but even in France, which traditionally has been very hesitant to introduce in English language programs, Italy as well. So I think, we see so many rapid changes, and, in a very basic way, there is a numbers game behind this, because population bulges in certain countries of the world means that there is a lot of youth that will be of university educating age within the next few years who are looking for more affordable options as well. So we probably need another session for it, but there's a lot to do with pricing, portfolio, the kinds of courses that are offered. I think Vicky and I both alluded to it. The kind of a model of study as well is really diversifying. So it's an incredibly exciting time, and I think Greece has a lot of inherent natural collateral through its history and its location that make it an attractive destination. And we learnt this when we surveyed over 1,000 students for the British Council report on France, Greece, and Spain. And Greece kind of dominated that report because of the sheer numbers of transnational education students here in Greece. And I think there are really good opportunities to, first of all, really enhance the public sector, but also rethink the relationship with different private or foreign sector entities as well within Greece. And I think it goes beyond just the research and the teaching. It's about industry collaborations. It's about sustainability, and it's really about the impact on Greek economy and society as well. So yeah, some really exciting future, I think.
Mm-hmm. And I have a question for you, actually. When you say that the UK is the first destination, study destination for international students, this also includes the campus branches of UK institutions abroad, overseas, or not?
Yeah, so sorry, what I meant to say was outside of the US, of the United States, the UK is the first choice. So the US is still number one. Yeah, so the branch campuses would count as the transnational education. So actually, I did show one graph which had two bars, one which counted direct international student recruits into the UK
In the UK,
studying
abroad.
Another doing the overseas forms as well. So, yeah, the overseas forms account for about 40% of all international students, which is a very unusually high percentage, I have to say, for for any country, much more than Australia or the US,
Mm.
which also do have their own branch campuses and things like that. But the sheer numbers of the UK are very high. And that's really why I wanted to just to provide a bit of insight into the data there, because it's a good indication then of what the kind of overall global interest is in terms of studying for English language degrees. And I think where Greek universities can enhance their degree awarding partnerships with UK institutions through joint and dual degrees, those kind of mechanisms, I think you will see really enhanced interest within the Greek sector for that, and it's something that the UK sector really want to do as well. They are looking to diversify who they partner with and where they kind of move into market. So I would suggest that the next couple of years we'll see some real movement on those issues.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's an added value for both sides. It's mutually beneficial cooperation. Um, And I think that Greece is between the countries that can leverage some restrictions and limitation in other traditional destinations, like in the Netherlands, where we can witness a cultural shift, I would say.
Yeah, that it's really true, and again, I
Reflected
did
in the legislation.
and I think keeping, as a country, keeping an eye on those policy and cultural shift is really important, because understanding your competitor market, of course, is important, but it gives you then opportunities to leverage into new markets. And I think we have seen a few markets where there was such rapid growth in internationalization that the sector felt that it was too much, and they have kind of rolled back on it. Others have had very good managed growth and really embedded internationalization as a culture of practice within that. And I think accompanying that, again, referring back to the points that Vicky was making, some of those countries have very been successful in promoting themselves as a as a national brand, let's say, in terms of being a study destination. And I think that's a very interesting and important development for the sector.
Mhm. So the main goal, the main objective of this consulting webinar series is to introduce high quality global experts of the field like Ishan and Vicky from Times Higher Education with stakeholders in Greece, especially universities, the leadership of universities and representatives of Greek higher education institutions involved in the internationalization of their universities. So feel free to reach out to them through Study in Greece or independently. If you want to collaborate with them in order to develop a targeted and comprehensive internationalization strategy for your institutions. It will be really meaningful, insightful, and helpful for you. Thank you very much, Vicky and Ishan and Rosie, who is behind the scenes. And looking forward to working with you in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time today, everyone.
Thanks so much, everyone. Take care. Bye bye.
Take care. Bye bye. Thank you.